To help of Hashem, we are learning Moed Katan Daf Chav Gimel. We are dedicating this class for our Chavedim, for Tzvika first, and for Shloima Horowitz, both sitting Shiva, for one for the father, one for the mother. May the Neshamas have an Aliyah. We left off on Daf Chav Gimel, Amud Aleph. We are 3 lines from the top of them. We left off in the middle of a Braisa. And we're going to learn about how there should not be formal Torah study in the house of the Avel. No, it's not only that the Avel is not allowed to learn Torah other than the Dinim of Avelus and other exceptional parts of Torah. That if people are gathered in the house of the Avel, many times people say, Chevra, the Avel is not here, the Avel went to rest, let's give a shir there. You're not allowed to do that. There may not be formal Torah learning in the house of an Avel. We're going to learn regarding after how long does one have to wait to get married. And as we will see, that you can only get married after Shloishim. You are allowed to get married after Shloishim, even if someone is an Avel for father or mother. They can do Nesuyin after Lamed Yom. However, here, interestingly, where are we the most machmer? All of the dinim that we were learning until now was how father and mother's Avelus is more chamur on many different levels. When it comes to remarriage, wife, that if someone's wife, God forbid, passed away, here and only here, not enough to wait 30 days. Me'ikar adin, aside of exceptions, a person has to wait 3 yomim tovim, however much time that will take, and only then can the person get remarried. Again, we'll see the exceptions when we learn the Gemara. We're going to learn in a Braisa about mourning, not being allowed to wear freshly pressed clothing. In the times of Chazal, that was very similar to the general Isur of laundering, but on top of that, they had a way of pressing their clothing that made it look like brand new. And there is an Isur regarding this freshly pressed clothing, and we'll see that goes for the whole Shloishim. And the main topic, it's a small daf, is a big machlokes that went on. And it's interesting, we're not quoting names of Amoraim, but we're quoting large portions of the Holy Land. So we're going to have the Bnei Yehuda, the Judeans, the Yidden that are living in Yehuda, versus the Yidden that are living in the Galil. Sholish Medinos, as we know, we're speaking about 2 of the 3 Medinas. The Galileans had a machlokes whether during Avelus, whether you have to mourn B'dvarim Shebetzina. Wow. And many were of the opinion that during Shiva, on Shabbos, there is mamish no Avelus, which means that a married couple can be together. And finally, we're going to have a lengthy Braisa that's going to teach us the dinim of Aninus, which is the heaviest, the most severe part of mourning, which is from the passing until the burial. We're going to learn the basic concept that an oinen is exempt from all of the mitzvahs aseh, even though an oinen is fully obligated to refrain from all of the shasa loisasa. And the main reason for that exemption, like we mentioned 2 shiurim ago, is to make sure that the oinenim are fully focused for all of the many needs that have to happen for the burial to happen again, and importantly, to have the burial done in a timely fashion. We're going to see again how the mourning obligation is chal, takes effect during the burial, even though there are exceptions. We spoke about the Sesimas HaGoylel, and we'll see how far we can get. Without any further ado, Chevra, we are on Daf Chav Gimel, Amud Aleph, 3 lines from the top of the Amud. Just for the people that are learning this in the morning, so this Daf will be posted, God willing, Monday morning. Okay, says, continuing the Braisa, that Ve'ein Oimrim Shemua Va'agada. How great is that? So we had the word Talmud 2 daf ago. The word Shemua means Gemara. In the times of the Tanoim, not all of the oral Torah was written down. Sometimes they didn't even have the Mishnayos written down. And even if they had some Mishnayos, but whatever is beyond that which was written, that's called Shemua, that which they still needed to rely on what they heard. That you cannot, means formally, share Gemara, we would call it. Here it's called Shemua, or Agadata, in a house of a mourner. In other words, halachis that the mourner may learn, can still learn it. But if it's something that the mourner may not learn, there's a whole question, this week there'll be Hallel. What do you do with Avelim? Hallel. Certain things we do in the house of the Avel, even though the Avel doesn't do it. That's our minhag. I think by By Shiva, by Rosh Chodesh, the Avelim walk out of the house. That's my recollection. And then in the house you say Hallel. Here the Vart is, Torah, I don't care if the Avel is not in the house. You don't learn formally Torah. However, Amru Olav Al Rab Hananya Ben Gamliel Shahaya Omer Shmua V'Agada B'Veisa Avel, and somebody Shainim hold that this leniency was only on Shabbos Kodesh. Okay, just to be aware of that. Now let's go. Tana Rabbanan. There's going to be a certain tradition about how every Shabbos, not week, Shabbos changes the laws of mourning from more intense to less intense, and there's going to be a machlokes how we apply that. Avel Shabbos Rishonim, up until the first Shabbos. We're speaking about the day of Shabbos. Eino yoytze mi Pesach beisoi. Wow. And by the way, some understand this to include Shabbos itself. And in most cases, Shabbos will be after the burial. And we don't paskin that way, but we'll see. They hold that the first Shabbos you're home. Shnia means from Sunday until the next Shabbos Kodesh. Yoytzei ve'ena yoshev mimakaymai. When you go to shul, we just had this before, you don't sit in your regular place in shul. And not only shul, wherever there's a gathering, if there's a Beis Medrash, you go to another place. The third week, Yoshev b'mekaymai, but ve'ena madaber. Person should be quieter, or be completely quiet. Revi'is guys, it means after the third Shabbos. For these dinim, harei kachal adam. I know that you're still in the shloshim, but you're kachal adam. Means there's no restrictions of going out, and you can sit in your normal place, and you can be engaged in the conversation as you normally do. Rabbi Yehuda says, all of this began with a mesoira, shmua, about first Shabbos, second Shabbos, third Shabbos. Rabbi Yehuda says you're off one Shabbos in all of your statements. Lo yihutzruchu loimer Shabbos rishon aliyasam pesach beisay. Because is
this doctor for parents or for anyone?
Anyone. It's amazing. In other words, you see here that during Shiva on Shabbos, they would not leave. So avada, you're not going out. So therefore, your tradition, you got it wrong. Everything is just delayed. He's delaying everything a week. Shnia, the vart is that even though Shiva ended, forget about Shiva, it's the second Shabbos after the burial, still Eino Yotzim Pesach Beiseh. Shlishis is Yoitzev Yeri Yoshev b'Mekaymai. Revi is Yoshev b'Mekaymai v'Eina Medaber. And Chamishis Harei Kachol Adam. In andere Werter, always, whatever we learned before, push everything off 1 week. Tana Rabbanan we learned in a Brais. Kol Shloshim Yoim. For the first 30 days, Lin Nesuyin means one may not get married. Meisa Ishtoi. By the way, engagement, you could, but not nesuyin. Meisa ishta, if someone's wife, this is a 1 day, not spouse. This doesn't mean if the husband passed away, she is allowed to get remarried. Mitzad the dinam of avelus, but we know other dinam that we're learning in Yavamis is there's something called havchana. Havchana means that if a woman is married, widow, divorced, she may not get remarried nesuyin until 90 days, not 3 months, 90 days, because of the whole concept that it's that important for us to know the yichus, and if she'll be pregnant, and because we normally have a 9-month pregnancy, the halacha takes into account the possibility of there being a 6-month and 1 day pregnancy. It's called a 7th month, but an abbreviated 7th month. We're not going to know who the father is. We don't rely on DNA for many dinim adayim azeh. For some things, for some things not. So anyways, let's focus on this one side. Meisa ishtay asur lisha isha cheres at sheyavru alav shloish regalim. You got to wait 3 yomim tovim. What's the magic of 3 yomim tovim? Let's learn a Tosfos. Right, the last big line on top of the Gemara. Second Tosfos in the Amid. At sheyavru shloish regalim. At sheyeh shloish regalim olei simcha. We want for this man to be without simcha of being married for 3 regalim. We don't want him to forget the love he has for his wife. According to Tosfos, Inami, kedei sheyisa isha acheres v'lo yeh zochur min harishayna. In other words, it's not about that. It's about if a man is going to get married, then he's still his first wife will be so fresh in his mind that when he is with his new wife, he'll be thinking also about his first wife. And that Baruchnius is very not good. And the words of Chazal is, it's called not to have two minds in the same bed. Meaning, so we need more time for him then to be exclusively focused on his new wife. Back inside the Gemara, third line in the wide lines, Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, no, a little bit more lenient. Regal Rishon v'Sheni Asur, but for the third already mutter. But it's still more than 30 days. Weiter, ve'im ein lo banim. Here we go with exceptions. If a man doesn't have halachic children, meaning he doesn't have yet a boy and a girl, then mutsar litala alter, he can get married right away. Right away means, it says in Shulchan Aruch, this is again, you can get engaged during Shiva, and he can consummate his marriage after the Shiva. That's what la'alter means. Why? Mishum bittul pirya. However, if another scenario where Rahman al-Atzlan, a man becomes a widower, hinichu lo banim ketanim, and the children have to come first, so here also he's allowed to marry right away. He cannot consummate the marriage, because here it's not about him having children, here it's about him being married, so there's no yichud issues, so there's a woman in the house taking care of the children. But again, he can get married. La'alter means nisuyin after the Shiva. Mepnei parnos sason. Wow. And in Shulchan Aruch it says that here he can only consummate the marriage after Shloshim. Which makes sense. Let's go weiter. And look at this. Maisa shemeisa ishto shel Rabbi Yosef HaKohen. V'amar la'achoisa. This is the story. And he told his sister-in-law, he told his wife's sister, bebeis hakvaris. L'chip uparnasi es b'nei achoisech. This is how he proposed to her. Please come and take care of the children of your sister. And she said, yes, I will. No, even though here he was allowed to marry her la'alter. Again, marrying doesn't only mean erusin, because after erusin there's an isur of yichud. The only solution for the kids is that there should be a woman in the home. All right, and there's no fear. But when can you consummate the marriage? After Zman Meruba. All right, and here you have to know also dinim, that if a man gets married but he's not allowed to be with his wife, it happens more often. It's called a chupas nida. So there are still restrictions of yichud v'chulei, but they are resolved by the presence of the children. Okay, Tana Rabbanan.
Rabbi, these restrictions do not apply to the wife, meaning if her husband passes away?
So I said, Yaakov, Bekitzer, the restrictions are not connected to anything we mentioned in Tosfos. There's another din which happens to be similar, which is Havchana. But if you have the 90 days, but it's not 3 Yomim Tovim, it's not 2 Yomim Tovim, it's between Pesach and it's between Tishrei and Nisan, in an Iber Yar, it's not even 1 Yontif, then she can get married. She needs to have the Havchana. Let's go back. Now this is similar to laundering, but it's specifically gihutz, which means pressing clothing. Kol shloishim yoim legiyutz. That you may not wear freshly pressed clothing within 30 days. And the vart is whether it's brand new, for sure not. Even if they're not brand new, if they are once they were taken off this press, they had a glance, they had a shine. That is what you're not allowed to do. It's like wearing new garments. That's the Tanakama, and each Tana now will be a little bit more lenient. Rebbe says, no, I'm sorry. If it's not Chadashim, you're good to go. I'll add to that. Not only is the problem new, it's only new and white. And now we'll see different Amoraim that were at least makel like some of the two opinions, if not like all of them. Abaya nafig begarda de sarbala. Abaya went out. This is during the 30 days that he was in mourning. Now there was a way of combing certain begadim that when you made the fibers go up, you brushed it. The same concept like the pressing, it made it look brand new. So he would go out in this type of coat that was combed. Keshitas Rebbe, even though it looked new, Tanakama would say you can't do that. No, but the Rebbe made it clear. The giyutz, I don't have a problem with giyutz or any other technique that would make a garment look new is not a problem. The problem is only brand new. And Rava was even more. Nafek b'chimutzta reimisa sumaksa Chadati. He had a brand new tunic but it was red. It's called a Roman red tunic. Because the latter Tana Rab Elazar ben Rab Shimon holds, no. The restriction of shloshim is new and white. It was taka new, but it wasn't white. Rab Elazar ben Rab Shimon says the Gemara, the last line. Now we're going back to our Mishnah. The Mishnah contrasted Shabbos and Yom Tov. After the Mishnah, our Mishnah taka holds that the regel is only canceling Shiva if you had 3 days of Shiva. We don't follow that, but contrasting that with Shabbos, the words of the Mishnah is Mepnei she'amru Shabbos oila. Shabbos is included in Shiva, and the Einam Afsekes, and it doesn't cut it short. Now, doesn't cut it short. Shabbos is included. Now, what pshat Shabbos is included? Again, there's many approaches. We're going to learn Gemara with Tosfos. No one was keeping the laws of Avelus Befaresia on Shabbos. The question that we will be discussing is whether one completely suspends Avelus on Shabbos to the point that even Dvaram Shebetzina, matters that are of private nature, meaning for a married couple to have marital relations, maybe that's even allowed during Shiva on Shabbos. And that ultimately became a machlokes between these two regions in the Holy Land. Bnei Yehuda u'Bnei Galilam, the Judeans and the Galileans. Hani Amri Daf Chav Gimel Amud Beis. Yesh Avelus b'Shabbos. Look inside the top Tosfos that we just quoted. Yesh Avelus b'Shabbos means for Dvarim Shebetzina, things that are of private nature. That, I want you to know that's the Galileans. But Vahani Yamri, the Bnei Yehuda, the Yidden that lived in Yehuda, were very lenient. They held Ein Avelus b'Shabbos. According to this Tosfos interpretation, it means there's no laws of mourning on Shabbos. Now each one was medayik from the words of our Mishnah, understanding it differently. Again, the Mishnah had like this double expression. Shabbos is oila. Shabbos counts for the Shiva. Ve'eino mafsekas, and it doesn't interrupt it. It doesn't cancel it. So let's go inside. Man, the Amar Yesh Avelus b'Shabbos, the Galileans. Why? Because they were medayik. The Mishnah says Shabbos is oila. Shabbos is included. The Mishnah says Shabbos is included. What does it mean? It means that there's some mourning, not in public, but in private. Man, the Amar, the Judeans that said Ein Avelus b'Shabbos, they were medayik on the next phrase in the Mishnah. The Eino Mafsekes, it doesn't cut it short. It doesn't cut it short. Now, what does that prove? Of course it proves. Because the if the Galileans would have been correct, so then I don't understand, why would the Mishnah even Hashta Avelus Nahago? If you're practicing mourning, does the Mishnah have to tell you that it doesn't cut it short? Of course it doesn't cut it short. You're mechuyev to practice, not the Feresya. Gevaldik. Oila means it's included. Does that not mean that it's taka included? No. He says that simply the Mishnah was being symmetric with the contrast that the Mishnah speaks out regarding a regel. I did the Kabbalah Mishnah Seifa regarding Yom Tov. That Yom Tov is Einoi Oilim. Yom Tov is not included because Yom Tov taka cancels it. But the Mishnah uses the words Einon Oilim. So to be symmetric, Tanaresha Oila. And the same thing in the reverse. Ulaman, the Amar, the opinions that hold the Galileans, that there is unveilance on Shabbos. But it says Einam Afsekes, it doesn't cut it short. And again, that same thing, like what's even the Havamina? Why would it cut it short? If you're practicing Avelos, so indeed, the Mishnah only writes those words also to be symmetric with the regel. Mishum t'kaboy l'misna sefer by a regel mafsikin, so tamaresha einoi mafsekes. Okay, so now that we have minhagim from Bnei Yehuda versus minhagim Bnei Galil, the Gemara is suggesting the second to last narrow line, Leima Kitanoi, that this is really subject to a machlokes Tanoim. Says the Braisa, Misha Meisoi Mutalofanav. Meisoi Mutalofanav is exactly how we define a oinen. The word oinen means someone who's deeply in grief. You know when they're deeply in grief? Prior to the burial. That's the meaning of Meisoi Mutal Lefanov. So number one, Oichel bebayis acher. Bebayis acher doesn't mean a house, it means a room. Right? Don't eat in the place where the mace is at. It's loyeg larash. Loyeg larash means mocking the poor. Doesn't only apply to keeping mitzvahs in front of the mace. Doing any type of human activity here, it's a human activity that the mace can no longer do. Okay? Now, Go to your other bias. What happens if a person doesn't have another room? Their whole house is one room. Ein bias acher. Even though this is a person that doesn't like to eat in someone else's home, that's life. So the other place will be not your home, eat in someone else's house. What happens if you don't have where else to go? Then you stay in the room of the mace, but you got to make a halachic partition, which means something that has at least 10 tfachim of height. And then the worst case scenario, you don't have how to build a partition, you don't have the raw material, at least turn your face around and eat. And while you eat, don't recline. Now, don't recline doesn't only go because you are eating in the same room. It goes b'chlal that there's a certain amount of eating that we change. Today, halacha l'maisa, what oinanim are told is that they shouldn't eat the family together. They're not sitting on a low stool. Aside of not eating meat and not drinking wine, they're not restricted. But today, this halacha is expressed by not having everyone eating together. Now, let's go weiter. The second wide line. Ve'eno oichel basar, an oinen may not eat meat. An oinen may not drink wine. And an ovel could, and that's the way we're noyag. An ovel doesn't have these restrictions. Ovel doesn't have these restrictions. An oinen cannot eat meat, cannot drink wine. We learned in Ksubis that they would drink 10 cups of wine on the day of a burial. That was different. That's if people are very anxious and they're taking wine to relax themselves, that's 100% permitted. Today it would be like taking a medication. But drinking as indulging, hana, an oinen may not. Next in, the
Sfardim don't drink, they don't eat meat during Shiva.
Sfardim. So then it points out, Sfardim and many others have these restrictions. Chabad, we don't have that restriction. Next, the Einam Avarach. The Einam Avarach, my friends, is referring to the brachos that are made prior to eating. The Ein Mezamen means they don't make the bracha after eating. Even though brachas prior is only a rabbinic obligation. Brachas after eating a proper su'udah as mid'o'iraisa, you don't do that. Not only that, the Ein Mevarchin alav, you don't even listen. No, it's not okay. I won't make the bracha, but I'll listen. I'll give you an example. An oinen doesn't make havdalah. There's a way how to do it. That is, if they daven mincha on Shabbos before plaga mincha, then they can daven ma'ariv on Shabbos after plaga mincha. Then they make havdalah on Shabbos, and they drink the wine because it's after plaga mincha, but they're still keeping Shabbos. But otherwise, like it's not only that an oinen doesn't make havdalah. An oinen cannot listen to havdalah. And if they didn't do the heter that I just mentioned, so then they would wait, whatever the halach is. Now by me again, my father passed away on Shabbos. He was buried on Wednesday. That was the quickest possible. I had no Havdalah. I didn't have Havdalah because the dinners, we all know, we can only make Havdalah until Tuesday. Back over here. So they can't make, it's not made for them. And the Ein Mizamnin Olav, they're not counted for a Zimun. My friends, you know what else? They're not counted for a minyan. And oinen is not counted for a minyan. Now, there's a whole question if on Shabbos they can count for a minyan. We're lenient because there's one sheet that says that they could. But coming back over here, they're not counted, they're not three, they're not, if 9 and them, there's no 10, there's no alikain. Upatir mikriya shema. Wow, Kabbalah Sel Malchus Shemayim. Mu'ubas hashal yuchal liskain is someone who misses a kriya shema. They don't say kriya shema. They're exempted from tefillah. Whether tefillah is deraisa, tefillah derabanan. They are exempted from tefillin. Umikol mitzvahs u'amurais batoira. And all of the classics. So why don't you just say mikol mitzvahs u'amurais batoira? But each one has a chiddush. B'Shabbos, like we mentioned, this is a mitzvah with a reason. The reason why they are exempt, basically, from all of the positive commandments is because we want for them to be focused on the mitzvah at hand, burial. Shabbos you can't bury. So the tam is not there. So therefore, first of all, meisiv v'oichel. Today that would mean they can eat as a family eating together. V'oichel basar, they eat meat. V'shoyse yayin, they drink wine. And they have to make brachas prior, and they have to make zimun and benching. Umevarchen, umezamen, and all of here, the way we're learning Pshat, they count for the minyan, they count for the zimun. The chayiv in Kriya Shema, the chayiv in Tefillah. Here we have the words ubetfilin. Now I got stumped. Do you have the version ubetfilin? Oy gewalt. All right, I'm learning this. We're learning. I'm in an airport somewhere. I don't know what to do with this tefillin. Tefillin. How can they be chayv and tefillin? Shabbos. I want you to know, my friends, that tefillin is called a time-bound mitzvah, just for the record. Alter Rebbe writes it clearly, not because you don't put on tefillin at night, because midoiraisa you put on tefillin at night. The only reason why we don't put on tefillin at night is because that a person...
In the bottom of the art scroll, he says to delete the word.
Tefillin, oh, thank you. Okay, it has to be... Okay, so it doesn't fit. I just want to finish that. I just say that tefillin...
If you check Rebbeinu Chananel, it seems like there's a chiyuv, even though, because he's in the... I don't know, it seems like that's what he's saying. There's a chiyuv. The kulam.
No, but how can it be? I just for the record, guys, tefillin by night you're mechoyv to put on tefillin. The Chachamim made a gzeira that sheba yafiach bahem. Person might let a wind when they sleep, and people sleep at night, so don't put them at night. Shabbos and Yom Tiv, we're not allowed to put on tefillin. You know, we just spoke it out a few daf ago. There's two oisais, bris milah and tefillin, or bris milah and Shabbos. We don't have three signs. Ubekol mitzvah someone is batayram. Rabban Gamliel loimer mitoich shenes chayiv be'elu mitoich shenes chayiv be'elu nes chayiv bekulam. Now, what exactly is he talking about? He's not coming to tell you regarding Shabbos. What do you mean? The Tanakama said you're chayiv on all the mitzvahs. So what is he adding? So Rabbi Yochanan explained Rabban Gamliel. What are we talking about? Tashmish Hamita Ike Beinayu. Gevaldik. In other words, even the Tanakama that says that you're chayiv and kol mitzvah Torah, Tanakama holds, guys, Tashmish Hamita has two aspects to it. So there is like, when a person is in mourning, they can't have pleasure. We're not focusing on that. We're focusing on the obligation that a married man has for his wife to be with her. That's a chiyuv. So when Rabban Gamliel is adding that since you're chayiv in all of the mitzvahs, you're chayiv to be with your wife. Tanakama holds that oinen on Shabbos is exempt. You get the havamina now. So we learned the machlekes by avelus, b'nei galol, b'nei gelila. Whether we're learning gevaldik, whether you're are you mechoyev to mourn, or do you have to be with your wife? You see, by aninus, that's the machlekes. So the difference is tashma shamita. And my lab, the Marsavel the Tanakama holds, he holds Yesh Avelus b'Shabbos, which means a man cannot be with his wife on Shabbos. So an Oinen cannot be with his wife during Aninus. And Umar Savar, that will be over here, Rabban Gamliel, Ein Avelus b'Shabbos, like the Judeans, that during Avelus a couple can be together. So that's why he's adding that the moment you are removing the expression of deep grief on Shabbos, so there's no restrictions, and therefore you're chayiv to be with your wife. That's l'cha'oira machlokes tanoim. Counters the Gemara, nish, no, mi, my, apples and oranges. Dil ma'at kan like Amar Tanakama Hasam. That you may not be with your wife during Aninus, that's only because Meisei Mutal Lefanov. It's different, it's a much higher level of mourning. But maybe Avalach, the Ein Meisei Mutal Lefanov, maybe not. And similarly, At Kan Loik Amarav Gamliel Hasam by an Oinen, because listen to this, the Akati Loik Chalavel Saleh. Mourning begins by burial. Stimas hagoylo, or as we learned in the last daf, if you're not going to the burial from when you were finished being melava the mace. So since it wasn't chal, you can still be lenient. Amazing. Here we see that aninus, on one hand, the grief is much deeper, but there's certain exemptions. Avelus didn't begin. Avol hacha, maybe since the avelus began, you can't remove it, and he'll also hold that yesh avelus b'Shabbos hachinami. No, Rabban Gamliel might rule, even though he says that Tashmish Hamita is a chiyuv on an oinen to his wife on Shabbos, he will hold that it's aser for an oval during the Shiva on Shabbos. Let's go to Chavdalah. We have Chaparan as much as we could. Boy, I mean, Rabbi Yochanan from Shmuel, by the way, they lived in different countries, and that's nice. That means that they wrote, the Shmuel, that's the Shilas and Shuvas. He wrote a Shilah. He wrote him a letter. Yesh Avelus b'Shabbos or Ein Avelus b'Shabbos. How do you pass? Amalei responds to Rabbi Yochanan, Ein Avelus b'Shabbos. Wow, like the Judeans. Okay, where did Rabbi Yochanan live? I think he lived in the Galil, right? He lived in the north, if it's called the Galil. Lived in Tveria, he lived in that region. Okay, right. Yosvi Rabbanan Kamei Rav Papa, and v'ka'amni mishmei de Shmuel. This is what they said. Avel sheshimesh mitasoi b'yemei evloi. Again, guys, we're speaking including Shabbos during the week. Even on Shabbos, where you had those who said there's no problem. Wow, chayav misa. Guys, chayav misa means chayav misa b'dei shamayim. And for the record, misa b'dei shamayim is a spiritual punishment that doesn't only come for a biblical violation. This is important. The Chachamim have the koyach to make certain enactments on the level by saying that if someone violates that, the chayiv misa. So Rav Papa rejected. Something is off. Amar Rav Papa, asur itmar. No, you're too severe. Yes, you're quoting a statement in the name of the wrong person. Asur, but not chayiv misa. And number two, this chumrah should be quoted and is quoted in the name of Rabbi Yochanan and not in the name of Shmuel. And why is that, my friends? Because, Shmuel keeps on saying, halachik divrei hamekel be'evel. So if we have a machlokes over here, Shmuel is not going to be the machmer. Now, furthermore, if you are insisting that we heard it from Shmuel, okay, you want to quote Shmuel, then it's something else. This is what you must quote. This is what you heard. This is the statement. Aval shaloi paraf. And Aval did not let his hair grow long. Didn't wait for 30 days. Cut his hair prior. Or v'shaloi peiram. Or if he did not rent his garments. Wow. Chayav misam. Shenemar, this is clearly an asmachta. This is a pasuk regarding, again, we come back to the tragedy that happened on the day that the Mishkan was inaugurated, that Nadav and Avihu, the elder brothers, the elder sons, passed away. Ratzi without shuv. And Hashem told the remaining kohanim, Rashechem al tifro, uvedechem lo yisefroimu, v'lo yisamusu. Now the pshat is that because since they were doing the avodah in the Mishkan, that will be a violation if they would do it with an external expression of mourning. But the drasha, this is not a midrabanan. If fakert, they won't die. But others who were not told by God that you shouldn't express grief by both letting the hair grow and by renting the garments. In other words, if they shaloi para or shaloi peiras, then they are going to be chayav misa. Again, chayav misa is takabedei shamayim, but it's an asmachta because it's midrabanan. No problem. Amar Avram bar Papa. We learned in Avel Rabasi. Guys, you know what we call Avel Rabasi? We have a series of Mishnayos that we refer to them as the small Masechtas, right? And we have a Masechta called Masechtas Simchas. Simchas is a euphemism. These are one of the main bodies of Tanoim, laws of Avelus. In the Rishonim, like we mentioned before, that there's 100 simanim of the Rosh on our Pedic. That's the source amongst our Paiskim. But you have what is called in the Gemara Avel Rabasi, the larger Masechtas Avel, which is not that big, or what we call Masechtas Simchas. It says over there, Avel Asur L'Shamesh Mitasei B'mei Evloi, meaning Shabbos. We're going back to this. And there, just to conclude with the story, that's the halacha, that there was a person. And listen, if he lived with the Judeans, he did nothing wrong. Because they held Ein Avelus B'Shabbos, the way we're learning with Tosfos, they were a couple were together. But if you didn't come from you are not a Bnei Yehuda, now that we paskined that you're not allowed to be Meshamash Shemitah, you're not Chayiv Misa B'dei Shamayim, but you're not, but it's Asur. So there was a man that had that relation. V'shamtu Chazedem es Giviyosei, and Chazedem snatched his body. The Rishonim explain that means that after this person, many years later, passed away, a Chazed ate up his male organ prior to burial. L'man Yishmu Hashgacha Pratis, that this person, that was his Aveda, that he was with his wife, that he was sitting Shiva for some of his relatives on Shabbos. We'll stop over here, and God willing to be continued.